All right. Welcome, everyone. This is the Business Applications Technical Community Call for June. My name is Barb Barrowman. I'm going to be our host for kicking us off today, so welcome, everyone. We've got a couple of slides that we normally start with, our community updates, and then we're going to have a demonstration on connected field services by Greg, and then we are going to wrap up. And as we look at our community updates, a couple of things that I want to share first is, again, to let everyone know, hopefully you are all registered for Inspire, which is going to be in Las Vegas, July 15th through the 19th. If not, there are still spots open. If you want to register, there is the registration link, and I will throw that in the IM window here shortly. If you guys do have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the message window. As always, we are going to be recording this session, and we'll be posting the deck to our Yammer site. You can also go back to where you joined the presentation in Event Builder, probably within 24 hours, and you would be able to re-watch the presentation from there. Another technical event that I want to make you guys aware of from a Dynamics perspective is our Dynamics 365 Technical Blitz, Making It Real, which is going to be next week. We have a couple events on June 18th, 19th, and 20th, and you can see we have the agenda for the Making It Real sessions. We're offering 2 times, so a morning session and an afternoon session or an evening session. And then we also have a session on marketing and Adobe marketing, and then one on Business Central. So I will post the registration links in the message window here in a second. So if you want to register for those events, that would be wonderful. Looking forward to those. And as always, just want to draw attention to the other 4 communities that we have available. In addition to the Business Applications Technical Community, we also have one for Apps and Infrastructure, Open Source, Data and AI, and Modern Workplace. And as you can see there, we have the regularly scheduled sync that we have for each one of those sessions too. So if you do have interest in growing practices around those areas, please feel free to join those community calls also. All right, and so we are in our June call here. We're going to be, again, talking about connected field services with Greg. Next month for July, we'll be taking a little summer vacation. We will not be hosting a call in July. We're hoping again that everyone makes it down to Inspire. If you can't make it to Inspire, I believe we will have some of the keynotes that would be streamed. So, and then afterwards, we will make sure we do an update. I believe in August we'll be doing kind of a what happened at Inspire. So please make sure you join us again for August as we will give you an update if you didn't get a chance to attend. And then last, just a couple of updates on our community and how we're doing. Last month we had 957 people that were active in our community. It was a very large increase, which I was very excited to see. But I did notice most of the people who are reading the messages were non-members. So if you are one of the people out there reading messages and have not joined yet to the community, we would love to have you join. It's very easy to register for that. It's a very active and vibrant community. A lot of really good information out there and the opportunity to ask questions, and we watch that and respond to those posts as quickly as we can. So thank you for participating in our community, and love to continue to see that to grow. All right, with that, we're going to move over to the Connected Field Services, and I'm going to pass it over to you, Greg.
Sounds great. Thank you, Barb. Going to take a moment to switch to this other presentation here. All right.
And it's loading.
The wheels of progress are spinning.
Yes.
There it goes.
I'm just getting a black screen. Maybe want to try again?
Yeah, let me try one more time.
Okay.
Okay. Share my desktop. Let's see. Now, Skype. Skype for Business is restarting.
Uh-oh.
That's not good. At least my audio is still there, right?
Yes, we can still hear you.
Okay.
That's okay.
Okay.
Everyone on
That's
the call
good.
understands, has been through this before, so we'll
That's
give
all
you a
right.
second
So
while that boots up.
Let me try one more time. He was presenting before. Okay, this one looks
Loading up. There we go.
more promising.
Yep,
All
now
right.
I can see your presentation. Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Let's get going. No worries. So thank you, everyone, for joining in. As Barb mentioned, my name's Greg DeGru. I'm a partner technical architect focused on Dynamics 365 for customer engagement, and of course that involves some level of field service. But today I'm talking mainly about the possibilities of extending field service with Internet of Things and some of the Azure cloud services that we provide. So this is just a quick background about who I am. A lot of the content that I'm going to talk about today, I'll share links later on, so we won't need to go into that. But in terms of the content at a more detailed level, most of what I'm going to be talking about today are for individuals who are new to the Internet of Things, new to Azure, so you don't necessarily have to have any experience with Azure IoT to understand or take advantage of what I'm going to be talking about today. But you do have to have some level of knowledge of Dynamics 365, of course, as well as the field service module that is a part of Dynamics. So in terms of the agenda, we're going to go through 4 things and then talk about what's next and how you can take advantage of some assets that myself and members of my team have created to get you all started with connected field service. So obviously talk about IoT, but focus a lot on the opportunity with IoT from a business perspective, from a technology perspective, from a digital transformation perspective. There's a huge opportunity around the Internet of Things, and I think it's found a home in Dynamics 365 with connected field service, so really going to talk about that a lot. Azure IoT Solution Accelerators are not necessarily a new offering within Azure. They were previously known as the Azure IoT Suite, but it's still the same suite of offerings that were packaged before in Azure. And of course, Dynamics 365 for field service that kind of ties all those pieces together. And what's next beyond this call for everyone. So what is IoT, the Internet of Things? Let's go into that a bit. It's really a concept that involves, I guess, sort of a 3-step process. There's things you can think of. Probably the most common IoT device that everyone is familiar with is your cell phone, your smartphone. It's not really, mentioned or referred to as an IoT device, but it is tried and true an Internet of Things device. Nowadays, we see many devices when we're referring to Internet of Things as, I guess, refrigerators or manufacturing equipment or pieces of machinery or other equipment that normally weren't Internet connected, but are now given the ability to connect to the Internet and other devices within Internet of Things. So that's how that sort of differentiates there. Outside of connecting things and having some level of connectivity there, there's also the ability to turn data into insights through the Internet of Things and, of course, take action and transform your business. So that's sort of the 3-step process, and that's where we see the value of Internet of Things. It's the ability to add some level of connectivity and intelligence to pretty much any device that you can imagine, capturing data from those devices, and then taking action on the data that we capture. And Dynamics 365 plays a huge role in that from the action standpoint. And you can imagine, even though it's not called out there specifically, Azure plays a huge part in creating that infrastructure that allows you to connect your devices and capture data. And also pointed out here, don't need to put direct mention to it, but there's obviously a huge financial opportunity for this IoT market as well. So moving on, this is just a quick mention to some of the messaging that's shared with our CEO, Satya Nadella. He obviously believes that every business will become a software business, but it's focused on building advanced applications and using advanced analytics through SaaS services. And that's all what IoT is about. IoT is all about capturing advanced analytics and using the SaaS services that we provide through Azure, and even some of our APaaS services through Dynamics to make this possible. So a shared vision straight from our CEO. I think it's important to really consider the Internet of Things in terms of Dynamics as a viable business model and a market that you should pay attention to just by looking back at the history of innovation. So there was obviously Microsoft and IBM that led the forefront of making computers and personal computers accessible to everyone. There was the advent of software. You can think of Office 365. You can think of the Office suite as it was back in the day with PowerPoint and Excel and how important that was to enhancing productivity at a global level. The web, you can think of websites and different social networking companies like Facebook and how they were able to take advantage of the power of the web and connect all of these different computers and use their social networking software to, innovate from the standpoint of the web and from a social perspective. And of course, more in the modern day, what a lot of us are experiencing now with mobile and cloud, we're seeing a lot of innovation and investment there. Obviously with Azure, we've done a little bit with mobile with Windows, but you'll see a lot of innovation from Android and iOS as well. Moving forward, we are seeing this now even within Microsoft, and many companies now are talking about AI and machine learning and somewhat IoT, but we're seeing a huge trend and a huge push moving into 2020. We're very close to that now with IoT and AI taking the forefront of what's going to be leading the forefront of digital transformation, what's going to be considered the norm for innovation in the future. And connected field service is going to be a very important solution from a dynamic standpoint and from an Azure standpoint as well for empowering partners like yourselves to take advantage of frameworks and purpose-built applications and infrastructure that we've already built to add IoT and AI to your various business practices. So very important chain of innovation there. This is just another call out to the opportunity that exists with the Internet of Things. There's 70% of value enabled by IoT from B2B scenarios, as reported by McKinsey and Company. In the future, in the very near future, 2020 is right around the corner. We've already talked about the financial opportunity, but in terms of data and in terms of connected devices, we're seeing a volume of data and a number of connected devices that we've never seen before. And from an infrastructure standpoint, Azure has been purpose-built to handle this sort of workload. And to add on to that, Dynamics has been purpose-built to be able to ingest all of that connected data and digital device data and signals sent from those connected things. So huge opportunity there, and obviously lots of data and large numbers to crunch and process. That's where Azure comes into play, I guess, is the first two steps in our IoT journey. So you remember earlier I mentioned the Internet of Things is about connecting devices and equipment, as well as capturing data and insights. Currently, in order to do that, it's very, very time consuming. And on top of that, there's security challenges, scale, issues with incompatibility with existing infrastructure. So it's not necessarily easy if you were to start from scratch to create, from a connected field service standpoint, the connected or the IoT piece of that practice. But the Azure IoT Solutions accelerators make that much more easy for you to take advantage of and reduces the barriers to entry. So the complexity is reduced. We've got security built in. It's very fast to spin up infrastructure. I have done this myself quite a number of times for demos. It's open. You can bring your own devices, whether it be simulators on the web, the MX chip, Arduino, Raspberry Pi, whatever IoT device you want to bring, you can connect it and deploy it to Azure. And it can be legacy equipment as well, and legacy devices. It doesn't have to be some of the more popular devices that I mentioned. And of course, it's scalable, and you can grow effortlessly with the IoT Solutions Accelerator offering that we have. And this is a very important slide because it demystifies what I mean by the Azure IoT Solutions Accelerator. So pretty much they're just a bunch of pre-configured solutions, whether it be device SDKs, storage with CosmoDB, AI services like Azure Machine Learning, other storage solutions like Azure Data Lake, and data processing services like HD Insights, and visualization services and other types of integrations. Microsoft Flow and Logic apps are, very popular now, I would say, and are very important in the business applications world. So there's direct support for that with IoT scenarios, as well as Power BI, as I sort of mentioned from a visualization standpoint. So all of these services are available to you out of the box with the Azure IoT Solution Accelerator offering. But there's also, the main reason that we're on the call today, this concept of connected field service. All these different building blocks or Legos or whatever you want to refer to them as, it's even harder. I know that we have these solutions and different services in place now for you to mix and match and deploy yourselves, but being able to set them up and connect the pieces with Azure to your devices and connect your Logic apps to be able to ingest data and send that to Dynamics 365, even that in itself is a pretty daunting task and not very easy to get started with. But that's where connected field service sort of adds immense value. Everything that we're seeing here is packaged up into the connected field service solution. And I'm going to show you in a second what I mean by that and how important that is from a getting started standpoint. So again, this slide just shows you the vast amount of infrastructure that we have with Azure that is really important from the standpoint of building an IoT practice and having the technology in place to be able to work with IoT devices at scale. So let's go into the Dynamics 365 piece now that we've kind of covered Azure. So with field service, just to level set, I know a lot of you are familiar with this, but there's various services from a scheduling and dispatch standpoint. There's mobile support. There's the resource scheduling optimizer. It's not called out on here, but there's all these different services that are provided through field service, and a lot of them are becoming more and more advanced. I know the resource scheduling optimizer uses some level of AI to find the right technician with the right skill set, to put them in the right place at the right time. So there's all these services that come out of the box with field service, but none of these really are IoT enabled just yet, but they have the capability to take advantage of IoT enabled scenarios. Connected field service is kind of called out there to hint at that. I also wanted to call this out as well, just to shed some light on this. So the previous slide was sort of the common slide that we show with the possibilities and services that we have with field service, but there's a large number of other scenarios that you can think of with some of the innovative technologies that Microsoft is providing. HoloLens, as you can see through this GIF that I have on screen, a lot of the out-of-the-box support that field service has for scanning barcodes, as you're seeing right now, to being able to identify part information and walkthroughs with different field service technicians. That's completely transformed with technologies like HoloLens and the introduction of augmented reality. And beyond that, to a more, I guess, not so futuristic scenario, but I mentioned the resource scheduling optimizer, but there's also our Glimpse integration and various levels of custom app API and field service technician tracking. There's a lot that field service offers out of the box, and a lot of different extensibility points, as you'll see with HoloLens as a small example, that make the offering even more valuable and impactful to your business. So with all that said, we've gone through IoT in a nutshell, how Azure is put in place to make it easy for you to get started with IoT practices and have supported infrastructure to enable IoT solutions. But now this is one of the key slides in the remainder of the presentation. When we refer to connected field service, it's really, I guess, at its basic level. If you're familiar with the Azure world, you can think of it as an ARM template, but it's pretty much a framework. So all of the different building blocks I showed you in Azure, all the different mentions that I had around security and that small widget within the field service flow that showed connected field service around scheduling and dispatch and all that. This connected field service framework, which is free to download as well, deploys all of those building blocks for you, makes all the connections for you between Azure and Dynamics. And even once deployed, it's completely customizable to you. So really, all connected field service is doing is deploying, at its most basic level, a connector between the Azure IoT solution accelerators in Azure and the field service module in Dynamics 365, and allowing you to take a more proactive approach to field service. These are just some some of the 3 scenarios that are called out actually directly on the field service documentation. I've kind of highlighted them, and I wanted to speak directly to them to give you an idea of what's possible with a connected field service framework deployed between your Dynamics 365 infrastructure and your Azure, or other IoT infrastructure if you have it. So some basic scenarios could include being able to detect anomalies and actually automatically creating work orders and dispatching technicians instead of you having to do some sort of manual tracking of anomalies. Temperature is a very common one that we see in many scenarios. So instead of having to monitor and react to temperature thresholds within device equipment, you can take advantage of the ability that connected field service has to automatically capture that signal and data from those various pieces of equipment and dispatch technicians and create work orders without you having to press a single button or take any manual action whatsoever. These are some of the more advanced and different scenarios that I'm playing around with now that are very valuable. But self-healing commands, so let's say that you have this issue detected with a piece of equipment. I already called out in the basic example. This piece of equipment is overheating. Through connected field service, you can send out a self-healing command that will, you can imagine run some sort of process or enable some sort of logic to kick off on that equipment remotely to reduce the temperature without you having to send a technician out or without having you take any manual action whatsoever again. And if that doesn't work, of course, you can take advantage of the automatic creation of work orders that are made to dispatch a technician there. But it's still very, impactful and very innovative to imagine that you don't have to send out technicians in certain scenarios through connected field service. You can use the power of IoT and the power of these self-healing commands to solve your problems for you without having any human or technician involvement. The expert example kind of just plays off the advanced one that just issues various troubleshooting scenarios to resolve the anomaly. Again, we're going with the example of temperature. And, you can read the rest there, but it obviously provides the most customer satisfaction and resource productivity. And if all else fails, if those automatic troubleshooting techniques aren't able to resolve the anomaly, you can dispatch a technician again there. So just some scenarios that are enabled by this. So this is a really good visual that shows you what connected field service actually does. So the Azure IoT suite of solution accelerators on the left, you have your connected factory or different equipment, or in this case, vehicles in transit. All these devices and business assets can be IoT enabled, and through this bridge that the connected field service offering creates for you, you get the ability to do that. Automatic resource scheduling, the automatic creation of work orders, the ability to troubleshoot and resolve anomalies and issues that you see within your devices in the field. It's all very, very powerful stuff that's enabled here. There's even support for, I mentioned mobile a bit earlier, but if you have some level of Dynamics portals or an investment there, then you can use that for customer contractors and some level of vendor support as well. So this bridge is connected field service. And this is probably the most clear side that calls it out. So that's the bridge that is put in place for you through this offering. This is just a deeper component view. As I mentioned before, all the different components that we saw within Azure are available for you to deploy out of the box. And so is that is true as well with Dynamics 365. But it's a lot of work to put all those pieces in place together to enable that bridge that we saw on the previous slide. So even though it's simplified in this view, there are a lot of moving parts that make that bridge possible. And the connected field service solution in AppSource, again, deploys all this for you. Each module within these bigger gray boxes for each platform in Dynamics 365, I can call that out first. In Dynamics 365, there's obviously the existing field service module, but if anyone's familiar with, I guess, the XRM model or the concepts of developing custom solutions within Dynamics, within field service itself, there are custom dynamic solutions that are deployed behind the scenes that just serve as connectors between Dynamics 365 and Azure in Azure from a device registration standpoint, from an anomaly detection standpoint, and just makes it a lot easier for you to enable your customer assets and connected devices from an IoT perspective, because any asset that you provision in Dynamics 365 for field service now, once you have a connected field service deployment in place, will be automatically provisioned in Azure, which I'll talk about now that we're moving over to this section, as an IoT device. And with that, all of the different IoT services, from storage to IoT hub management to greater connector support through Logic Apps, is unlocked for you through this IoT assets and through this connected field service add-on module that we have on the Dynamics side. And as I sort of mentioned there, there's obviously a bunch of different components that are in place on the Azure side, and really all they're serving the purpose of is, once you have devices provisioned in Dynamics from an IoT asset standpoint, the connectors that are put in place through connected field service automatically register those devices with IoT Hub, and the CRM and IoT connectors through Logic Apps, the service bus and queries through Stream Analytics, all again out of the box, have the infrastructure and I guess business and code logic in place that allow you to parse and capture the exact device data that you need. When you first deploy connected field service out of the box, it's specific to temperature, but as I mentioned, all these different components here are completely customizable. You don't have to just settle on, this configuration that's deployed out of the box for you. You can configure your business logic to capture humidity data, pressure, if there's some value that capturing accelerometer data and various pieces of equipment in your existing infrastructure, then that's totally possible with connected field service. So just pointing that out there, that all of these different components are wired for you, and the bridge for Dynamics 365 in Azure is created automatically. And there's also a visualization layer and client device support that comes with this as well. So what does all of that mean? There are many different components. It's great that the connected field service solution is free and it wires all the stuff up for you, but at the end of the day, this is the value that it provides to you. And I'm going to call all of these out sort of individually, but the key point here is this three-part scenario enables a just-in-time proactive field service practice. Many legacy practices follow the kind of reactive model, and that's not as efficient, it's not as fast, and it's more prone to error in some cases. But from a just-in-time standpoint, from step one, from a technician manager perspective, they have all this knowledge and all these various views and dashboards that are enabled through connected field service that allow them to proactively monitor, in this case, a real-time customer review of repair status on this piece of equipment. Maintenance costs is reduced by this view and this data insight by having, again, I'm going back to that example of the right technician at the right place at the right time, the exact expertise needed to resolve this field service scenario. And even when the technician gets on site, they're fully equipped and are sort of empowered to do a first-time fix. They don't have to, go on site and be completely blindsided by the issues or anomalies that are detected with the equipment for their field service job. Because at step one, because of the data and insights that we get through connected field service, we see exactly what the issue is through the data and dashboards that are provided through this solution. And we know from a technician standpoint, that allows them to know exactly what needs to be fixed and exactly how to resolve the anomaly at hand. So it's very, very powerful stuff. And that pretty much closes out there. The just-in-time proactive field service wraps up the value of this entire solution. But for this call, in my call last half, I talked about bots, and I had some level of examples and had a blog around how to get started with that. But I wanted to do a lot more with this one, since this is an area that I'm particularly passionate about. So all of you on call today that are still listening, you've done step one of getting your connected field service competency. You've learned about the Azure IoT solution accelerators to some level. You've learned about the ways that Dynamics 365 can be extended with this connected field service add-on. But now you're ready for the next two parts of your journey. The second part is maybe something I'll display on screen if I have time to provide some more insight to, but I'll just speak to it first. I mentioned a bit earlier that I guess myself in particular has created a number of assets for my Dynamics team to help you get started from a hands-on standpoint. So when it comes to even if you don't have a deployment in Azure, we have a lab that shows you how to deploy a free Azure trial and set up your infrastructure there. If you don't have a Dynamics instance, or if you don't want to use your existing Dynamics instance, we have content that shows you how to deploy a fresh version of Dynamics and wire those Azure Dynamics pieces together. And most importantly, we'd show you how to deploy the connected field service solution through AppSource. It's just a point and click sort of experience there. But with all the different components that are deployed through connected field service in Azure, and even from a dynamic standpoint, done the work of, in this lab, calling out all the different components that are in place so that you know, so that you're more knowledgeable of, what happens at which step, and what changed in Dynamics when you deployed connected field service, and what changed in Azure when you deployed connected field service. And at the very end of the lab, out of the box, connected field service has a sort of web application temperature simulator that shows you how to capture device data without you having to invest in a physical piece of IoT hardware. So all that is sort of packaged in this first lab, showing you how to deploy connected field service and capture and detect anomalies from this simulated device, and of course create a work order and take action if you wish from a technician standpoint on this automatically captured anomaly, and creating a work order out of it. The next lab that I'm working on, and I'll show you where you can find all this content, is in progress, but it shows you more advanced scenarios if you wanted to use a real device. In this case, the MX chip is a very popular IoT device. The MX chip is something that I've been using recently to run through a lot of these scenarios. And it just shows you from a more real-world standpoint what it would look like to connect a physical device. And more important to you all, since I mentioned all this stuff out of the box may not necessarily be applicable to your business, it shows you what steps you need to take to configure the components of connected field service to add support for, in this case, it's just the MX chip, but really any device if you'd like, as long as you have the, I guess, data structures well-defined and in place. But that's just a mention to the labs that we've created, and I'll hop out of the PowerPoint in a second so I can show you that. But all of this stuff from the presentation to these labs, all this is leading up to encouraging everyone on call to build solutions with our One Commercial partner team. So connecting with PDSs and PDMs, connecting with myself and other partner technical architects on my team to really help you make these scenarios possible. We don't want you to, just go on call and read the blogs and go through these labs yourselves. We've created these assets so that you can get started and developed some level of competency, and then come back to us with scenarios and use cases and issues if you're running into them, so that we can help you resolve those issues and make those use cases and such possible. So I'm going to hop out of my PowerPoint for a second. I know we have a little bit of time left, so before we jump into questions, I'll just, I guess, call out these pieces here. Let me start with this. So when you go through these labs, the very first thing you're going to do is go to AppSource and grab the Connected Field Service add-on and hit Get It Now, and that's going to run through some install process to deploy it to your Azure instance or an Azure trial if you created that, as well as your Dynamics instance or your Dynamics trial if you've opted to go down that path. From an asset standpoint, I think this is called, I'm pretty sure this is called out in the blog, but all the labs for provisioning Dynamics, provisioning Azure, installing Connected Field Service, and then capturing alerts with Connected Field Service, that's all free. It's out there in the wild in this GitHub website. Again, I've linked this in the blog post if you all would like to look at that, or if you would like to maybe capture this link information now, then you can. I could probably put it in the chat later on when we take questions, but to give you an idea of the detail and I guess what the different steps look like, I'm going to try to pull up one of these guides here. Well, while that's loading, oh, okay, it's already loaded. So as I mentioned, this is sort of step 2 beyond this call that we're really encouraging you all to do. I mentioned that you have to install the Connected Field Service add-on, but step by step from an instance standpoint, from a Azure subscription and resource group standpoint and definition of services. I've called it out here to make sure that you all understand exactly what's going on from a step-by-step standpoint for the Azure piece, because that's one of the biggest, I don't want to say barriers to entry, but one of the biggest pieces that it is involved here with Connected Field Service before we can get started. So there's a lot of Azure content at first, and we run through that in terms of understanding the app services, understanding the device simulator. So that's where you don't need to invest in a piece of physical hardware. You can take advantage of the device simulator that comes with Connected Field Service out of the box. So lots and lots of content there, but all that amounts to this, what we really care about, Dynamics 365. And each one of these active IoT alerts was captured from the thermostat simulator that I deployed in Dynamics 365 automatically. So didn't have to, write any custom code myself. I, of course, didn't have to send out a technician, because you can't really send a technician to a website to capture data. But this gives you an idea of, what sort of alert data you can capture, and how powerful it is from a, automatic work order creation standpoint. So this is an example. Again, I've jumped into Dynamics after showing you in the lab briefly kind of what it looks like to get started with the Azure services. But after deploying the Azure services and using this temperature simulator, which I'll probably show in a second to give you an idea of what that looks like, you have the ability to automatically capture device data. It could be any device, but in this case, it's just that thermostat simulator. And all of these data points are captured for you from the exact time and date that the alert took place, the data associated with the anomaly that was detected within this thermostat asset. But the real value of that, outside of the bridge between Dynamics and Azure that's demonstrated here, is you can now automatically create a case, a work order, and schedule and dispatch a technician, and then close the work order once this issue has been resolved. So very, very, very powerful stuff here. Let's see. I can go into this lab briefly here if this loads up to show you what that thermostat simulator looks like. And then after that, I think we'll begin the closeout and open the floor for questions. So I think there might be some trouble opening this document here. That's okay. Regardless, as I mentioned, within the blog and even on the call, if you all would like, I can post this link here. Everything you need to get started is on this website for you all to take advantage of. But with that, I'll kind of pause for a minute on this slide, and I think within the last 10 minutes we can open the floor up for questions and feedback from the audience.
Well, I have posted the GitHub site and then also the link to AppSource. So everyone can grab that in the messages area. We don't have any questions right now, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to post those in the message section. We'll give you a minute to think about that.
Sounds good. Were there any other links or entered or other tabs, Barb, that maybe you wanted me to go back to or pull up again so we could capture that information, or did you get everything that you needed?
Well, I just took the GitHub site that you have in your blog for the documents, and then I have just the link to App Source, and then to search for Connected Field Service to get them there. So, is there anything else that you want me to post?
I think those were the main ones.
And yes, we will post the recording and the presentation on the Yammer site. And then you can also come back to where you registered and where you started the event here on Event Builder, probably within 24 hours, and you'll be able to watch the recording again. But we will get the deck out on Yammer tomorrow, and then post the link to the recording in Yammer also. Awesome. Well, if we don't have any other questions, we will go ahead and wrap the call for today. But I wanted to thank everyone for attending. Thank you, Greg. That was an awesome presentation. And hope all the partners out there see some opportunity in connected field service and IoT, because we think that is definitely a growing area. So we got a couple of just good questions. So thank you guys for attending, and have a great rest of the day.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.